Shalom family, we here at Mountain in the Field humbly thank you for all you have done for us so far. We have many more ways to go, but together we can accomplish so much things. So as a sign of our appreciation, we want to say thank you. And if you want to help support us and our movement even further, there's plenty of ways for you to do that. Right now you're looking at our Etsy page. Here we have our soaps, our body butters, our packages that we offer, which is a combination of our oils, soaps, and butters, which you guys can support us on. We also have our black walnut oil, which is very, very, very cleansing for those out there who are looking for help. And as well, our regular King's oil. And so all these things here are for the family, or for everyone out there who are on this way right now, seeking help, seeking the benefits that the Most High has in store for all of us. Now, if you guys want to support us there, here's our Etsy page that you can click on. The link will be in the description for that. Now, we also have our meal preps that we also do. As you can see, we be whipping up. We be making this thing look nice. So everything that we have here is for the tribe. Now, if you want to get in contact with us, here's the email in which you can reach us at. This email will also be in the description as well. It is mntnifield@keyemail.me. Shalom.
Shalom everyone, and thank you for joining us today for another episode of Mountain in the Field Cooking. This is Minna here, and you might be wondering why I'm holding a beet. Well, I promise you won't actually guess. But with all of these random components, I just want to introduce you to an inspired meal or dish. An inspired deal, most definitely, but still a dish that we really enjoyed, a meal that we've taken part in over the past week of kind of recreating a popular food that you might be able to access at one of your local fast food places. It's definitely been a time when we've seen a lot of like Chipotle style pizzerias, but now we just want to give you a little bit of access of having in your own rendition of it in your own house without having to potentially pay that price tag that comes along with it. But in general, infusing that love into the food that you can't always get from traditional restaurants, but doing this with the cleanest materials that you can for your family, and then just enjoying the time that you may spend with the loved ones while you're cooking these things as well. So to get started, I'm actually going to start at something that's not going to be as traditional. We're going to be pickling some beets. Now,
you weren't going to give me a beet? I'm sorry.
Inserts laugh track. He really wanted that one in there. But anyway, I thought I did. Just give me a beet. Yeah. Anyway, so we're just going to slither up some of these beets really nice and fine. I'm only going to be cutting from about halfway through the beet just so I can get a small piece. You don't want it to necessarily be like the full round, and this is a pretty hefty one.
You can see the nice little frequency in that beet.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you see all the love from the Most High in that one, but I want you to find like a really small part. That was the greatest cut I could have done on the first try. But anyway, find a flat.
I'm gonna come around you real quick.
Exactly.
Come around you so the people can see. You can see a little something.
That camera magic right there. But just get as thin of a slice as you can. And obviously I already pre-sliced or took off a lot of that rind around it to start. I kind of do it in that like Johnny Cake. Well, I don't remember the reference. Like, as if you're peeling an apple
or a potato with a knife.
But they would actually, if you're doing it with a knife, then you would potentially do it. Just be very careful that you don't get like really into it and just kind of come for your own hand. But if you want to be really safe with it, you can always go in the direction of using an apple peeler. But with that, you also risk the chance of the juices kind of like firing back at you. But good thing about beets is they also make a great natural dye.
Right.
But in general, again, you're gonna want to slice these slices really thin, because once we get to pickling them, we're just going to use like so I'm cheating a little bit because we are actually going to be using a quick pickling process instead of doing the traditional like jarring or putting it off into its own vinegar mixture and letting it sit for a couple of days. A lot of people, they might have a craving and they may not have enough time to just, wait. So we're gonna do this a little bit on the stovetop, but in doing so, you'll at least be able to kind of figure out how you can do pickling quick and easy for all of your future meals. So you can pickle onions. It's gonna be the same technique, pickling even cucumbers if you wanna make a quick pickle for that. Yeah, it just kind of opens up the world of options for you if you really wanted to. You can even go in the direction of pickling some peppers for, that's a fun sentence, pickling peppers for any of your future toppings or sandwiches as well.
Okay, so after you finish doing that, what else are we gonna do?
So yeah, we're gonna speed through this process, and I'm just using beautiful cutting techniques as well. You are going to put this on the stove, get the pan kind of heated up to about medium-high heat, and add about a half cup of apple cider vinegar or distilled vinegar. All right, so I'm gonna get started just putting the beets at the bottom. Back at it, and we're just adding some apple cider vinegar to our beets. Again, this was on medium-high heat, and it was about a half cup or a little bit over, maybe at 3/4 of a cup of apple cider vinegar. Now, the big part is when you are going to be pickling these beets, you're not only going to be adding a little bit of sugar to it just to sweeten it back up, but then you're also going to be adding some pickling spices, and included in that is usually some bay leaf.
Okay.
If you have a pickling spice, you don't want to make it yourself, you can find a good one like McCormick's. But other than that, if you really are just going to put your own stuff, a lot of this is similar to what is in your spice cabinet of like cloves. You have ginger, you have mustard seeds, bay leaf, pepper, salt, and just all the good stuff. Again, those are going to infuse into the food and just really bring that out, all those flavors that you have. A half tablespoon of sugar added to your mixture. Now you're gonna want, especially as a vegetarian or vegan, you're going to want this to be from an organic source. So again, that also just kind of ensures that there's not going to be any gelatin or any of those adverse practices added to the mixture. So you're just going to have this simmer at about medium-high heat for about a minute or two just to start softening it up. We're actually going to transition this into another bowl so it can sit and really like start to pickle in itself. But again, this just activates the process really quickly, and then we'll take it on off the heat. So we're going to make a mosey on back over to the true pizza making aspect of things. Take a walk with me. So we're going to get started on the dough. This is just 2 cups of all-purpose flour. I usually start with all-purpose flour because it is going to create a softer dough, but if you want one that's going to be a little bit firmer, you can use a traditional bread flour as well. But I also wanted to cook with the products that are commonly found in most of our kitchens, so I didn't want to make it so that you had to run out and buy a fancy dough in itself. I also like to follow up just to kind of build up on that texture and like the bulk of the bread with about another cup of wheat flour. So we're gonna bring that up to it, and you can get really technical with it and sift out your flour itself. But a lot of times, honestly, even though baking is a process of chemistry and you are transforming one material into a chemical reaction to make it be something else completely different, I am just not that I'm not that strict with it. I'm just gonna be honest. It's not in a bad way, and you definitely can be a little bit more rigid with it, but I think as long as you get that approximate product that you're looking for, you'll still be in good standing. So I like to add, because of the fact that, you know, dough isn't really flavorful on its own, I like to add some parsley flakes to it.
Now, how much parsley flakes would you suggest?
Again, you're just kind of letting the spirit lead you, but I like it for aesthetics. Parsley, dried parsley itself isn't necessarily something that's going to bring a lot of flavor to the mixture, so really a little bit or a lot of it does not really hurt. What you're really going to be more particular about is like your things such as salt. You don't want too much salt, and this is a little bit of onion powder. You have some garlic powder as well as Italian seasoning. This is the Italian seasoning.
Okay, okay.
I just like everything to be flavorful through and through, and I also like color. So I'm not really a traditionalist when it comes to certain doughs and they have like just that starch white color all through. I really like rye breads and things like that.
Okay.
And then a little bit of garlic powder.
Okay.
I'm not a stickler for that. I mean, I'm a stickler with garlic powder. I'm not too heavy-handed with that. But just to add some flavor and dynamic to this, I have a little bit of tarragon. Now, this is like my herb of choice. I'm not going to lie to you. Tarragon is like bread and butter to me. As well as you can also kind of have your own rendition. You can add some dill. I add about a teaspoon of pepper as well. And last but not least, about a teaspoon of salt. And you can be a little bit more heavy-handed with this. I don't have as much of a palate for salt like that. And with a lot of seasonings, you'll also get some additional salt content in that as well. So be flexible with it. And then I also am going to add about a half teaspoon of baking powder to this mixture. And that's just so we can get some lift. I also am going to tell you a little bit of my secret ingredient. And it's not really a secret. It's just more vinegar. A lot of times.
What a build-up.
Right.
That's a build-up right there.
I'd use either like a dash of lime or a splash of vinegar, and that just again allows for the baking soda to really be activated. Now my real secret ingredient.
Oh, before we move on to the real secret, well, I'm pretty sure they can't see it. But before we move on to the real secret, would you suggest for the people that might want to know, with the vinegar adding some lime juice with it as well, or no? So
again, like if you were using baking powder in itself, you usually need to activate baking powder. Baking soda you would need to activate. Baking powder, on the other hand, and sorry for the twist of the tongue, but I know this is the common confusion, is that it usually needs a sugar and an acid to activate it so you can get the full benefit of it and get that rising agent to come through.
Okay.
But I just like to have both because it's still going to cause a little bit of that chemical reaction with the baking powder in itself, even though it's already able to be stimulated on itself.
And what was that for the people that weren't paying attention in the back? What you just pouring right there?
Oh, this little orange stuff? That's a little bit of nutritional yeast.
Okay.
It just adds a little bit of that cheesy flavor again, and I know that's a lot of times what we don't get with plant-based pizzas, but I also just think it's pretty tasty in a lot of the foods that we consume anyway. So what you're going to follow up and then just kind of get all of this mixed together is with some warm water. Now you're going to use about a cup of warm water, but I like to create a little bit of a well in the middle and then just fold it in on itself. And I'm actually going to change my dynamics, so as you are starting to get more of a firmed up version of your dough, the glamorous, monstrous hand, but as you start to get more of a consistency with your dough, you'll gradually continue to add the water, just so that you can continue to pick up that flour. And you don't have to worry about kneading it too much just at this point. I also like this recipe because this dough seems to be a little bit more forgiving. You don't need to knead it too much, but unlike a lot of doughs where you may get stuck kneading for like 10 minutes, what's really going to be grateful about this one, or what I'm really grateful for with this one, is that you're just going to be able to let it rest, and those gluten follicles or gluten proteins will start to form themselves and be a lot more chewy and delightful as we desire for them to be.
Okay.
Casual. So one thing you'll also really want to add is a dash of sugar. I don't believe I mentioned that beforehand, but you'll want to add a dash of sugar just to add that sweetness to the dough, and it also helps it to spread a little while it's cooking. Also, one of my other secret ingredients is I really tend to favor traditional Jamaican festival. And so you can either use this, as very much optional, as long as you have the whole wheat flour, because that's usually the basis of the festival as well, is you can use the festival as a substitute for your whole wheat flour, or you can use just the traditional whole wheat that you may have have in your own pantry. Again, this is not something where you need to feel that pressure to run out to the store and grab things. So as you're starting to get a little bit, like, we still want the dough to be a little sticky, but I do want to add a little bit more flour because I think I might have pushed it just one dash too far with the water. And again, that's why you really want to just get intimate with the bread and know exactly what you're getting. So this is about the consistency of the dough that you're going to want. And again, you can just start to massage it a little bit more. Make sure that it's not too sticky, and if it does get past that level of being comfortable for you, you can always just add a little bit of flour on the hands. But what I'm going to do is kind of calm this down from manipulating it too much so I can let it rest. You want your dough to rest for about a half hour again, so those gluten follicles can kind of come together and it's on there. Just a little bit. And again, dough's very forgiving in this regard, but you don't want to get too carried away just adding too much flour. So as you've gotten your dough to the proper consistency, you'll just want to form it into a ball so that it can really just rest and chill like a little baby. Just mold it with your hands, and then you can just wrap this up in some plastic and pop that in the fridge for about 30 minutes. You'll be good to go.
Okay.
Good night, my sweet. So starting at about medium heat this time around, we are about to get into our meaty aspect of this pizza.
What type of meat will we be using today?
So with a little bit of grapeseed oil to coat the pan, I'm actually going to be making some mushroom meat.
Great! All right.
I'm loving the enthusiasm. So we've already chopped up some baby bell peppers, and I'm just going to add that to the pan. I could have let that heat up a little bit more. Don't be impatient like me, kids. But, you know, the great thing about all of this is very forgiving. Just going to let this simmer for about 5 minutes or so.
One quick question. What about the beets?
The beets are going to chill.
So, how quick should we turn them off after we put them in the pot?
So again, after you put those in the pot, just with any of the quick pickling methods that we are using, you're only going to keep it on the heat, and you start it at medium-high heat for about 2 minutes, and then you reduce the heat down to low, let it simmer for a little bit. I actually don't use that much heat on the beets, so I didn't keep it on for that long of a duration. Now I had actually pre-cooked some pickled onions and cabbage, and this was using the same methods. This is reduction of red onions, red cabbage, and a little bit of white onion, again with the apple cider vinegar or distilled vinegar and the pickling spices and the sugar. But the big thing with this is I actually did allow this one to cook down a little bit more because I don't necessarily want the raw flavor of the onion coming through like that. I wanted that because it is going to be a topper versus the beets being more of a oven aspect. Like, it's going to get baked with the pizza. So you don't have to cook this one as long because you don't want it to be necessarily mushy or anything like that.
Oh, we saw we hear a little magic going. Okay. Hear that sizzle? Okay.
Crackle pop.
That's what we're looking for right there. So you said 2 minutes on medium-high heat for the beets, and then you reduce it to how much?
You're going to reduce it down to low heat, and then you can finish that out for about 5 minutes if you do desire to do so. If you like a firmer beet, you can definitely take it off the heat after the
Okay.
initial.
All right, so right now our beets are resting.
Yep. So there's nothing wrong with the chill
There's
beet.
so many jokes I can make
Exactly.
out of that.
I was like, I feel the producer inside of you just cracking for a pun. So, talking about the cracking, I'm going to crack some pepper over these mushrooms. Again, what's really nice about mushrooms is that they're going to give that earthy, beefy type flavor. And not necessarily saying that we are seeking a meat flavor in itself, but it does have an umami flavor that's just going to have like that richness that we're looking for to give that substance. Also, with this, non-secret is a little bit of liquid smoke.
Okay.
I always like a bit of liquid smoke on my food just because I really like the flavor that comes through on that. Also, I'm going to add some coriander. And we're just going to let this cook down a little bit before we add too many spices, because I want it to actually be activated first before you just get all that goodness in there.
So you're saying you activate it before you put other things in it?
I think things need to be prepared and activated first before you really start layering on the true like essence of everything else.
So you're saying cooking is not just something you do for fun, but it's a science behind it as well.
Oh, with all things, yeah, without a doubt. So again, yeah, it's already.
I smell this. Oh yeah.
So you really want to just cook it down on its base layer so that it can have a little bit of those aromatics pop through. And then once you start getting that scent, that's when I start adding my own mixture of herbs to it as well. Now with this, again, we had the coriander that we started off with. I'm actually going to add a little bit of nutmeg because I do like a little bit of that sweetness that pops through. Not too much, even though it looked like I just shook a lot. It's actually not caked, but it just didn't come out as adamantly as I wanted it to. And then I'm going to add, we already did the pepper. I'm going to do a little bit of sage. Ooh.
Some of the sage.
That sage did not actually go into the pan. It meant a little bit more so on my shirt, but that was cool too. And a little bit of crushed red pepper. Now we're going to have 2 elements of heat that pop through on this dish, or on this level of
When you said a little bit, you actually meant a little bit.
Yeah, well, because, so this is the thing. I don't want it to be too spicy on this end because I also like to top off the pizza with some crushed red pepper.
Okay.
So I feel like if you infuse it too much everywhere, it's just going to be a one-note complex, and I want it to be dynamic all throughout. Now this is really starting to smell really, really good. I kid you not. I am adding a little bit of paprika to this. Now I like paprika, so I'm a little biased. I go kind of hard with that, and it doesn't even really have that much flavor, but you can definitely use either paprika, which is just, it's a milder version of cayenne, so it does have a little bit of spice to it, but then you can also use a smoked paprika, which is a little bit more deep in its flavor. But then I also have a little bit of, now I am going to start sounding like I'm sponsored, and I'm not. We have some steak seasoning that we put on this as well, and that's just a mixture of garlic, again, the garlic, onion, a little bit of some peppers, dried peppers, and then my bias comes to the fact that I feel like we get everything inexpensive because we live down the street from that spice factory. So, as this is starting to reduce,
look at that browniness happening.
Yeah. I'm gonna make this fun with the big twist.
You don't say, Oliver.
Oliver.
Oliver Twist.
I'm done.
Get it?
That one threw me off a little bit more because of my family connections. But yeah, I was like, wait, okay. But yes, I have some ripe sweet plantain.
Oh, okay.
Now even my beloved was a little thrown back by that. I'm just going to toss this in, and it's going to fry up on its own. But what's nice about this as well is that it does take on the meatiness that the mushrooms are offering. So although you're going to still have those bites of sweetness coming from the plantain itself, it's just not going to be the traditional plantain flavor that a lot of us expect. Okay. But it cooks down really nicely.
It's looking nice and smelling nice.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
So, now that you've let this simmer for about, I'd say about 5 minutes on medium-high heat, it is more than welcome for you to add a little bit more oil if you see that it is drying up a little bit. But again, this is going to be more of a baseline food, and then it is a lot of water being released in this too, so you'll see that it's being replaced by the oil in the actual plantain and mushrooms. So now that we've got a little bit of brown coloring on the plantains themselves, I'm going to come in with my ladder Jamaican feels with some fish and meat sauce.
Okay.
Now, not by any means am I trying to just slather on things that are meat in the title or something of that nature, but just knowing that this is something that traditionally I've enjoyed. in my foods. And it also always adds a great element of flavor. Never hurts to have this in your arsenal. And honestly, one day I would like to deconstruct this and show y'all a video of how you can make your own meat and fish sauce. So we're just going to let that cook down a little bit more, and then we can take this off the flame. Now if you like me, we like this a little bit darker, so I kept it on the flame a little bit longer. But you can definitely take it off a little bit sooner. I just don't really care for that mushiness, per se, quote unquote. It's not necessarily what it is, but you know, to each his own. So we're going to take that off the heat and let it rest.
Okay.
Next up, we are going to get into the nitty-gritty of making our dough.
Okay. So what do we have here?
On this, my dear, we are going to be making a balsamic glaze to top off our pizza with. So I'm going to start this on medium heat. That was a little bit too high. And it's just going to be a reduction. So this is going to be our last element before we actually get fully started with kneading and preparing the dough. But while we are setting this up, you're just going to turn this up to medium heat, pour about a quarter to a half cup of balsamic vinaigrette or vinegar into your pot. You're going to let this simmer for a little bit because it's going to actually reduce down and thicken a bit. In the meantime, I'm actually going to turn on my stove to 425 so that I can truly preheat for us. And what I also like to add to this from the popular chain restaurant, I'm not going to debo their recipes straight out, but I do like to have a little bit of like apricot filling in it, just to add a little bit of that more fruity sweetness to this. So just adding about a teaspoon to 2 teaspoons of apricot jelly to it. And we're going to give that a stir and let that reduce down. Looking so appealing right now. But the sugars in this will start to allow for all of this to caramelize a little bit easier. Should actually be using wood. So I'm just going to let this cook down a little bit, and then we're going to remove these apricot bits that didn't really break down. But this can kind of have its own little party on its own. What we're really going to get into after all this is said and done, while this is working on its own self, is chopping up our toppings, and then we are going to start kneading and rolling out the dough. So we grabbed our dough from the fridge and slowly let it fall into your hand. So, the wise way to do this would have actually been to put a little bit of flour on your hand first, but we're gonna roll this out a little bit. Again, you're just going to put a little bit of flour on the outside and on the bottom side of the dough, just so it doesn't stick to you too much.
Which unfortunately we already let happen.
Hey, we're not perfect. Alright, so this parchment paper was my downfall.
Just don't do that. Just make sure you put it on it before.
Usually I flour it first and then drop it, but I didn't have it out yet, so I'm human. I am. I'm also from above the firmament, but I have my moments. Anyway, so we can do this the fancy way, or we can do this the easy way. So you can do this the way. Oh, sorry, no, I'm not gonna be a full-out Italian man, but I actually like to stretch and pull, and just turn it like you're turning the wheel of your car in a very frantic way. But you can either go this direction and have a traditional elongated pizza, Or you can have more of a circular and just kind of let density play on its own and just let it fall. Because I'm not really a big person to toss my dough too much, but I do like it having a little bit of individual flair to itself. So we're going to stretch it. And you see how that gluten has really just come out?
Oh, it looks good.
You want to go for the Lido's Pizza vibe today? Not sponsored. Sorry. My parchment paper is everywhere. And depending on how thick you want your crust is up to you. Honestly, you can make this into still somewhat of a flatbread dough if you wanted to pull it a little bit further. But it's pretty forgiving for the most part. And the world, I'm not going to say is your oyster because we don't eat those. But you've got options, my friends. You've got options. And also feel free, if you really wanted to, you can roll out your dough if you wanted to have a little bit of a thicker crust. Do you want to do that today? Want some crust? And you can brush this down with a little bit of olive oil as well. A lot of the chain pizzerias that we're basing this off don't necessarily have a crust like this, but I'm feeling fancy today. Whoop. You can brush this down with either a little bit of olive oil, or if you're into butter, you can use that. Coconut oil. Sometimes refined coconut oil actually plays for a really good factor in this too. Cause
it's looking good.
Excellent. You know you're the main person I'm cooking this for. And so we'll grab out some of our tomato sauce. Rewind. You want to make sure that you poke holes into your crust so that it can actually cook through and allow the air to escape without just causing a massive bubble in the middle of it all. So don't forget that, like I almost did. So now you're just going to put down your tomato sauce and spread it to the edges. Delightful, but not a rocket science. You got this. I have all faith in you. So, the big part is just choosing your toppings of your own desires. I'm going to chop up some spinach, and then we have some artichoke, some calamari olives. We also have some more goat cheese, because you know we can't get too much of that in our lives. And we have red onions. Again, we have some banana peppers, and let's not forget our pickled beets and mushrooms. Right. So you have a little bit of spinach that we're going to chop up and add to the top of our pizza. And what I'm going to do, we also have the artichoke that we mentioned beforehand. Just going to layer this on the bottom. Spread it kind of liberally. I only chop it up because of the fact that some people don't really care for the aesthetic of, you know, grabbing a leaf and then taking the whole thing with them while they're biting off a bite. But you can very much so leave these whole if you wanted to. It's just off of preference for the most part. Then I grab a little bit of the goat cheese. I'm just going to cut off a little slice of this and crumble it over top of the spinach. Giving it a pre-cut makes it a little bit easier to spread so you're not just squishing it with your hands all out. This part's not for glamour's sake.
But it's for taste good's sake.
Right, we have a lot of that for later if you want to be pretty with it. But yeah, just liberally spread that over, and it's going to melt down while it cooks.
Looking good. Looking good.
Alright, so we also have some artichoke. The personal favorite of my topping. Make sure that you're being conscious of how much you're putting on all parts of the pizza. You don't want to be stingy on one side and lacking on the other.
Okay.
So now is also the time that you can add your mushroom and plantain mixture. And then we're going to follow up with some calamari olives.
Tongue twister right there.
That was definitely not my most graceful version of saying that, but we're not going to talk about Kalamata olives.
There we go right there.
And we are definitely going to break up all of this brownness with some red onions. And last but not least, our beets to be that flare of beauty on top.
Just give me a beat.
So pressed on that joke. I can't be mad at you for that. I have plenty of beets to give. Some red onion. Now, all of these toppings that I'm giving and suggesting to you today are, of course, are optional. If you like...
Can I do this?
Yeah.
Just one little... Hey! All right. Don't do that, though, but it was a little bit of onions left.
That was
I want all my onions.
the most dramatic.
All of my onions. I need those.
Wow. We'll talk about that in post. The big part is more so the fact, well, outside of that, is also the beets. So, don't mind using your fingers. Look how beautiful those are. You can turn them on.
What's that?
Salt Bay.
Salt Bay.
I'm just adding a little bit of feta on top so it can melt in.
Okay.
But don't those pickled beets look so pretty? Also, word to the wise, don't spread your feta right after dipping your hands in beet juice.
Okay.
So now that is all ready to be put in the...
You want to glaze the sides?
Oh yeah, my favorite part. You really forgot it. Can't find my brush right now, so we're not going to be technical.
Use what you got.
Exactly. Most gum. That shit. Most High gave me. But this will just allow for it to be a nice golden crust as this bakes. And will definitely let us know how well done you like your crust.
Alright, so after this, everything goes in the oven?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, well, we'll see you after it comes out of the oven.
So you'll want to bake it at 425 for about 20 minutes, but it's definitely up to preference. You'll actually see the dough rise, and that'll be your telltale sign to get it out.
How many minutes again?
About 20 minutes.
Okay.
We'll see you in 20 minutes, friends. Ain't she beautiful?
Yes, she is. Yes, she is.
Those beets are a beauty. So, what's also really nice about pickling beets is that they actually sweeten up even more so when they cook in the oven. So, it's balanced out very nicely. Very bold, earthy flavor. Yeah, so we kept it in for about 20 to 25 minutes. 425, and this is the result that we have.
Great.
We are going to top it off with a little bit more of our beautiful cheese. We have some more marinara that we can use for dipping. We also have our wonderful basil pesto, the presto pesto, so that you can eat and taste the besto. But anyway, yeah, so we're just gonna top this off and garnish it all nice and beautiful. Like, we also have some hot honey that we can drizzle over it. We have a little bit of pickled peppers that my father made, and yeah, all you have to do now at this point, you can go ahead and cut it and just dig in and enjoy. I hope that you really do get a chance to try out this recipe. I know it's a little bit loose, so of course you have the ability to take as much creative liberties as you want, but really this is just to give you the guidelines and the structures as to how you can have your own glamorous pizza at home, and just think about some different toppings instead of just your traditional standard green peppers, onions, and black pepper, and olives, that they assume that that's all we want to eat as vegetarians. So yeah, I really do hope that you enjoy this, and again, let the spirit of the Most High guide you and keep you safely, that you will have many years of health and prosperity, and in the moment that you are truly able to appreciate what He has provided on our green earth. Well, we are signing out here from Mountain on the Field, and again, Mountain in the Field, and enjoy.
Shalom.